first episode of Wolfram Summer School alum Fireside Chat. I am E, work at the Academic Innovation Support Team at Wolfram Research. I am thrilled to be here with two remarkable alum, John and Filas. So let's start with a brief introduction with our guest here. Could you share a bit about your background and what drew you to Wolfram Summer School?
Sure. So I think we're both in this first edition of the alumni fireside chats because we're two of the people from the Wolfram Summer School who then decided to join the company, and we all work on the same team. So it's quite convenient for us to organize this first. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing what lots of other alumni would like to share their stories too. So before joining Wolfram Research and joining the summer school. Originally, I started at University of Illinois studying physics. I got interested in physics education. And then after having this interest in physics education and teaching for a while, I always am interested in interesting things going on in science and technology kind of on the side that's sort of beyond what you might be teaching in a particular class. And so because of this interest, I decided that the Wolfram Summer School would be a great place to not only explore what people are doing in some of these areas, but also this was so I went to the summer school in 2022, and so that had been an interesting couple of years for people who were teaching, and so I was starting to think, well, I've been on this sort of career trajectory for a little while. Do I want to stay in the classroom at the moment, or do I want to look at some other options that are out there? And so as a school, it's not only just learning how to work with interesting technology and employ new methods in science, but one thing that I found it really helpful as a working professional was that it was a great networking opportunity and way to see how do projects really come to life from the initial idea to a completed this is what we're able to do in 3 weeks as a way to see how Wolfram Research as a company really gets stuff done. So that's sort of my brief history.
So how about you, Filas?
So I was actually quite interested in Wolfram for a couple of years before applying to the Wolfram Summer School. My background is in human ecology, and I applied for the summer school right after graduating for my bachelor's degree at a school studying human ecology in Maine. And at this while I was a student, I was really interested in GIS and very interested in generally speaking geocomputation and complex systems. And so my interests naturally led me to Wolfram Language because of the work that Wolfram does and has done over the last 35 years in complex systems and the functionality that they've added to the Wolfram Language for geocomputation. So I was very curious to see whether I could apply my interests in GIS to a project in the Wolfram language to bring together satellite imagery and remote sensing data, and so I applied with the hopes to do something computational with geographic data, and I'm very pleased with how that turned out. And I as the project went on and I saw that it was going well, I took the opportunity to say, well, maybe there's a place for me at the company, and things went along from there.
Yeah, so we will talk more about like your story, like how did you end up working with us. But before that, I want to ask John and Filas. So John, you have been teaching for a couple of years, and Filas, before that, you were like study for your bachelor. So how did you learn Wolfram Summer School as an opportunity?
That's an interesting question. I think I found it on the website when I was looking at just generally what Wolfram as a company was up to. I lived in Champaign, Illinois, and had for some time, and this is, of course, where the office that I'm currently sitting in now is. And so I'd been familiar with Wolfram Research as a company in Champaign for a while. When I was an undergraduate, I learned how to use the software Mathematica as part of my physics degree. And so I had been interested in the language as something that was very useful for doing various tasks since I was an undergraduate. Then it really wasn't until I was teaching a physics class and had this sort of realization as I was adapting some materials from sort of one of the things that I always liked doing was trying to bring the university curriculum closer to students who aren't necessarily in that degree program, right? And so as I was adapting some materials, it occurred to me, I used Mathematica when I was learning to do this stuff. Maybe I should actually adapt that along with the rest of the curriculum materials. And so that was the thing that really started me on this thinking of, oh, well, what is Wolfram up to these days? And so I was just looking around the website and found the summer school as an opportunity. And I'm sure we'll talk some more about the tracks as we go, but I actually was interested specifically in this education innovation direction because that was sort of the most immediate professional need that I had at the time was, I had spent a few years, not really using the language as much as I do, currently or had in the past. And so I, thought that the school would be a great opportunity to, catch myself back up to speed. I had done some porting over of materials already from, let's say, something that might be taught in university to students who are outside of a degree program but still want to learn those both conceptual skills but also the coding aspect of it. And that was really the draw is the students, after they learn whatever course it is, they're going to have a very concrete skill at the end of it as well, that no matter what you're using the language to do, then how to use a bit of the language after you've done it, and so you can transfer that. So yeah, that's the sort of meandering path from I had a need in what I was working on to I wonder what Wolfram is up to. I used them when I was learning physics, and then finding that the school was an opportunity to see what was new and also to see what was going on in the company in a larger scale.
Yeah, my bachelor's degree was very interdisciplinary, and I was looking. I did a lot of data science and programming in my coursework, and I was very interested in tools that would allow me to study interdisciplinary subjects with very little friction. And I came across Wolfram language while taking courses on various mathematical topics because I was just interested in brushing up on some of those subjects, and just found that it was an incredibly good fit. And so I got interested in Wolfram as a company from then on, and through my expeditionary funds as an undergraduate, I went to the Wolfram Tech Conference in 2022, and it was through discussions with people, including John, that I learned about the Wolfram Summer School and decided to apply. And I'm very glad I did.
Yeah, so for two of you, before going to Wolfram Summer School, you already have some experience with like Wolfram language, and especially John, you are like trying to use Wolfram language in your teaching. So for the audience, for the context, at Wolfram Summer School, we are using a project-based approach. So each students, you will be doing a project consulted with your mentor and our chief project advisor, Stephen Wolfram. And at the end of summer school, you will be having something presentable and also be part of your portfolio. So I want to ask you to, you have some experience before, but how the project you did in summer school different from the things you did before with Wolfram language, and what's the special experience at summer school, and what the challenge you have come through?
Yeah, that's a really great question, how especially things are different than what I'd normally done. So I'm going to share real quick. So one of the nice things at the end of the school is that, as you said, it's project-based. And so everyone has a finished item at the end of 3 weeks that then you have a nice write-up and is something that you can say, this is what I did over the course of these 3 weeks. And so my original introduction to Wolfram language, as I said, was in a physics department. And so most of what we were using it for was we were using it to solve equations, we were using it to plot things, and we were using it to fit models. And that was my introduction to the language. And so then that was sort of my idea of, oh, this is what the language does. But in fact, so what I wound up working on had more to do with helping students navigate the vast amount of built-in data that exists as a part of what you get when you're using the language. So, when you're querying Wolfram Alpha, it's not hallucinating answers. It's going and seeing, is there actual data, or can I do an actual computation to produce answers? And so I had absolutely no idea or conception that you could use the language for doing graphic user interfaces, because when I was first using it back as an undergraduate, I had absolutely, we didn't do that. I had no idea that you could even use it for that. And so as a result of discussing with one of the other nice things about the school is that everyone is paired with several mentors, in fact, who are experts in the language and experts in some domain or other. And you get lots of good advice from all of the both developers as well as people who are in other roles that are there and really know the language inside and out, and can help point you in the right direction for figuring out how to do things that you didn't know the language could do. And so this was more what I wanted to learn while I was there is, okay, how do I use the language for creating interfaces? Because, I know, okay, it can do computation, it can, do statistics, it can fit models, it can do data science, these sorts of things. But before the school, I had absolutely no idea that you could create graphic user interfaces with it. And so, I just did a very quick Filas' project, I should say, looks much more visually attractive than mine. That I really like that one. But just a very quick user interface for navigating this large amounts of built-in data was just a quick project that I did. And another thing that I'll say is advice to people. One of my challenges, I think, is during that first couple of days of the school, you're deciding, what your final project is going to be, right? So when you apply, you indicate things that you're interested in working on, but you really don't decide for sure what you're going to work toward until a couple days into the school, after you've had a chance to really sit down with the mentors, talk with them, meet Steven, etc. And so one of my mentors suggested, hey, there's this really interesting project in the physics track that you might be interested in. And so we discussed it for a little bit. I said, this really sounds like an interesting project. I'm not sure it's a 3-week project. I think it's like a 5 or 6 week project. And so, for that reason only, I think, I want to stick with this other direction that we've been discussing. But that was one of the challenges, is that, you do get very good advice from a variety of people as to scoping, how are you going to actually have something that you can finish in 3 weeks. And so, what I decided to work on was, I had a pretty clear idea, like, yes, I think this is definitely doable in 3 weeks. Whereas this other very interesting idea, I don't know if, 3 weeks would be quite what I want to spend on that, and would be a better sort of longer term project. So at any rate, that's my brief little bit about that. I'm sure we can go into lots more detail about these as we go, but Filas' project looks much better than mine. So let Filas show off the nice things that came out of that year.
Thank you, John. That's very kind of you. So one of the big challenges. Okay, let me first talk a little bit about my project. I worked on a remote sensing packlet for the Wolfram language, bringing in remote sensing services and various forms of imagery from NASA, from their Gibbs and their Appears services. Both of these are APIs that you can query to get various kinds of imagery. Through Appears, you can get raw data, and through Gibbs, you can generally get tile services for visualization. So you can use those in geographics when you're making maps in the Wolfram language. And when I started the project, I thought, okay, well, there'll probably be some kind of there's some documentation that tells us how to make queries to these pages, and how to get to the specific data that we want, and how we can authenticate to get all of the information and bring it into the Wolfram language. And what I found is that I think that was the biggest challenge for me in the actual project, because I hadn't really had any experience with interfacing with APIs. And bringing the information into the Wolfram language was honestly really simple, but figuring out the actual the format for the queries, and understanding how to authenticate to a remote service, and making sure to and also keeping track of asynchronous tasks, because when you request data from the Appears service, it takes a while for them to process the data and make it available to you. So you have to have some functionality built into the code so that it keeps track of that task, and it loads in the updated data once it's finished. So the big part I want to maybe highlight in this project is the Gibbs interface through the Wolfram language. Gibbs is the software that NASA uses for the back end of their worldview platform. So when you go to the worldview platform, you have all of these general areas where you can get all sorts of data sets from the from NASA services. And my goal was, okay, let's bring this into geographics somehow. And in fact, this is wrapped up into a Packlet now that you can install, and you can do this yourself. But the idea is that you can list through this Gibbs data function all of the available layers that that NASA provides through their Gibbs service, and you can get additional information about those layers. And then you can specify that layer as a geoserver through the geographics function to plot maps in any geoprojection and for any range, and then you can sample specific pieces of data from that map, etc. And so understanding how to interface properly with online services was a great challenge, but also very, very rewarding. And I think that what made it really special was that my main supervisor, and really everybody at Wolfram was just there every time I had a question or something to troubleshoot, something to do in the Wolfram language that I'd never experienced before, some questions about any errors that I was running into, or even just general broader questions about how REST APIs work. Someone with expertise in that specific subject could show me their notebooks on their computer and help me troubleshoot and learn this new skill. And so my project moved really fast, and much faster than I anticipated that I could really advance it throughout the 3 weeks of the program, and so much so that we ended up submitting the work as a Packlet to the Packlet repository.
Yeah, so I am impressed by both of your projects, especially Filas, the visualization. So, John, you have mentioned like you get some advice from your mentor, but in reality, you realize it's out of the scope of 3 weeks. So I wonder, at summer school, how did you interact with your mentor for the audience? So each student would assign a mentor or a co-mentor. You might have like 2 mentors, but I wonder, like, except for your mentors, how did you get help from the whole staff team? Like you might get like other help specific, like a command of Wolfram language, or a specific file from like someone who is not your mentor. And
Yeah,
also the rest of your cohorts. So I would love to hear your experience.
yeah, that's right. So I had 2 mentors. So depending on the year and the exact numbers of people, we usually have between 2 and 3 mentors per student. And so what this allows is that not only do you have sort of a project committee who can sort of help steer the project in the right direction, but everybody has their own various expertise on things that they've done more of in using the language, or maybe even outside the language, just background knowledge in other fields, right? And so because of that, we really want there to be someone who's very knowledgeable about all sorts of things that you're likely to run into as questions. And so it's also a very collaborative environment, as you were saying, right? Is that the mentors, the mentor meetings, usually the mentors will decide with the students and provide some feedback of what after trying for a couple of days, is it better that they have sort of like a check-in meeting like every other day or every day, but then these informal conversations happen constantly, right? Where there's all the other people at the school who are giving lectures or mentoring other students, and of course they're very friendly and they know all sorts of things about what they're experts in the language. And so any questions that came up about anything, in fact, the mentors all typically know each other pretty well too. And so sometimes I would have a question, I would ask my mentor, and they would say, well, I don't know as much about this, but you should ask so and so. And so then, okay, so just, at a meal or in between events, just sit down and say, hey, I'm having this problem. What do you know about it? And they can immediately give you very good advice. So, the mentors are there sort of to be, the official point of contact for if the student, has any questions or concerns, there's someone who is like definitely available for them. But, really, in fact, people have said it takes a village to do events like the summer school, and this is true. Is that everyone who is there, whether or not they're your mentor, is there to help and to answer questions and not only provide advice about the projects, but it's also nice meeting people who are at a variety of places in a variety of different careers. And so, if you're curious about, hey, you do X, Y, or Z as your, day job when you're not at the summer school, what's that like? It's a really great way to as I said, not only just learning about the technical skills, but also just getting a sense for, what's something that I don't have any personal experience like. And, there's all sorts of people with a lot of great experiences from all over the world as well.
I mean, it's interesting. I think we had a couple scheduled meetings with my mentor throughout the 3 weeks of the program, but we were talking so constantly and interacting. We were interacting just throughout any time that I was at the like in one of the study rooms or at lunches. There were just conversations bubbling and going on the whole time throughout the summer school, and I think actually that these lunch conversations are a great feature, a great underrated feature of the Wolfram Summer School, because you have these opportunities to have great conversations with many different people, students and other faculty at the summer school who have completely different interests. And so you have these very eclectic conversations that aren't necessarily directly related to your projects, but often will still tie back into the projects, because opportunities that weren't immediately apparent through your previous discussions just with your mentor or just discussions with other students in study sessions end up being really relevant to the work that you're doing. And that was certainly the case for me. We initially had just planned to do the Gibbs stuff, and when that really started moving, we realized, oh, well, there's also an opportunity to tie in this other source of data, and it was through discussions at dinners that really happened.
Yeah, and another thing about the dinner conversations is that Stephen as well likes to pop in for lunches and dinners, right? So like there's the meetings that are going on with various groups of students as they're having their sort of official project meetings, but when schedule allows, you'll see all sorts of people just in the dining area, as Filas said, having these more informal conversations, which are, I agree, a great feature. In fact, one of the things you asked about challenges earlier, one of the challenges that I had was that I'm one of these people that in order to like, take all of the advice I'm getting and sort of synthesize that into, okay, so this is the chunk of progress. I like to sort of sit and think for a minute, without having conversation after having had the conversations. And so one of my challenges was there's so many great conversations and so much advice to be had that like, okay, so let me take an hour and like actually implement something and then come back, right? And so that stepping away from all those interactions was actually one of the challenging things for me.
Yeah, so since we mentioned about Stephen, so one of the special feature is Stephen Wolfram, who is the founder and CEO for Wolfram Research, is the chief project advisor at Wolfram Summer School. So Stephen really take a hands-on approach to advise students' project. I wonder, like, what's your experience with Stephen during the summer school and also on the first week of the project meeting?
Yeah, so I guess I can start. So I think that the most interesting things that come up are usually around sort of, so like when you're working on, at least in my experience, when you're working on your own project, you sort of have a roughly clear sense of what the challenge is and what you're going to do to try to adjust the challenges are. If you don't, then of course Steven's input is really great on that. But for things that you're not thinking about every day, it's great to sort of get like a wider sense of how some of the other projects are going, because there'll be sort of small group discussions. So as I said, for my particular project, I had chosen to go with this more graphic user interface direction. That I had a pretty clear idea of, okay, so I think this is how this is going to work in terms of scope and other things. But there were still surprises that came out of that, I should say. But at any rate, for me personally, I think the most interesting thing about these interactions, both with Stephen and other mentors, is that none of these projects are happening in isolation, right? Like there's everybody wants to know what everyone else is working on, because it's always interesting. And so I think that was my favorite part of those interactions, was even though there's the thing that I was focused on, there's other interesting things that are always going on.
Yeah, I think so. Expanding on that, I think when people applied to the summer school in the year I applied in 2023, I think some of the admitted students weren't sure I think some of the students from the application materials had expected that maybe their project suggestions were going to be exactly what they were going to study at the Wolfram Summer School. And so I remember having discussions with the other admitted participants, where they were telling me, well, it sounds like there's actually more negotiation going on about this project assignments. So am I going to be able to study what I like? Am I going to be able to get to do what I'm interested in? And my experience with that, and the feedback that I heard from other students after the initial meetings with mentors and with Stephen, was that actually we all ended up with projects that we were quite interested in. We all ended up with projects that were very tailored to the kinds of things that were achievable within the 3 weeks of the school, and also our general research interests. And I think this is because Stephen's very careful about tailoring the discussions around project selections to people's interests, and identifying challenges that might be hard to anticipate from your perspective, depending on your level of experience with the Wolfram language. So I hadn't expected to do the project that I ended up doing exactly. I had some suggestions for things that were actually, in retrospect, I realized much bigger projects that would have taken much longer than 3 weeks. And having that discussion with Stephen really helped me to narrow it down, and also really helped to identify exactly what are the components that were going to fit into the project at different stages. I met with him again partway through the 3rd week of the summer school, to just check in on the project discussion, and we sort of just had a casual philosophy conversation about the structure of language, and I think that was a really a great opportunity to just get a sense of how I guess, I don't know, how Stephen thinks. I think he's a very interesting character, um, and having random philosophical conversations with him can be very interesting and enriching. So that's another opportunity that I think people might get out of the Wolfram Summer School, that is not necessarily listed in the summer school description, but is definitely an advantage.
I agree. And one thing that Filas pointed out is, so Filas will this year as a mentor get to see so those conversations from the other side, is that in the application you do indicate the sorts of things you're interested in working on, and then exactly as Filas said, right? So then what happens is all right, so this is what each attendee is interested in doing. There's sort of some things that we've thought about ahead of time that would be also good projects and sort of timely projects, especially in the world of, like, let's say quantum computing or large language models for this year. Last year, large language models, of course, were a very hot topic. And so, we collectively, we had sat down and thought about, okay, so for people who are interested in this area, but maybe not sure what they want to do, here are some suggestions. And so then in those initial meetings during that first couple days to usually by the end of that first week, you've got a really clear idea of what it is that the goal is. So during that initial period, you we'll discuss, okay, so this is what I'm interested in pursuing, and then these are some other suggestions of things that, you know, the mentors think are really doable, as Filas mentioned, within 3 weeks. And then also something which is very good that Filas pointed out is, you know, anticipating, you know, possible roadblocks that might not be obvious from the get-go, but might come up. And so, you know, in that initial couple of you know, project meetings, this is where that discussion happens to figure out, okay, so given what the person is interested in working on, what's something that they'll have a really nice takeaway at the end of 3 weeks, rather than, you know, just starting on, let's say, like a 6-month you know, very nebulous thing, right? So yeah, again, the real focus is trying to make sure that at the end of, you know, your time at the school, you've got something which is finished, right? Even if it's only first steps toward doing a larger thing, but there's some chunk of it that has been picked out and you know, identified as, okay, so this is the chunk which is doable.
Yeah, I think with the experience of working both at Wolfram Summer School 22 and 23, I would say the nature of Wolfram Summer School is really beyond a school. It's more of an innovation lab. So like people come to either have some initial idea, or our team, the staff, can help them to shape their idea and test the idea in this lab. And later on, like, of course, 3 weeks is always like a short time, but you kind of test your idea here, and then later on you can scale that up in your, you know, professional work or in your study. Like a lot of people also, you know, go back to their PhD study. I think, yeah, I would really suggest the student treat it as a lab, and also the term of student is kind of a little bit confusing, because you would think, okay, a student is like learning. You'd like, of course, we have a lot of class, but really, our the people attend summer school range from like undergraduate students all the way to professional and also academics. So can you share more about like your interaction with like the cohort, especially given we have such a diverse background, like based on, you know, geographically and age and like subject domain expertise?
Yeah, I mean, I personally always like to meet people from all over the world, right? So I like to travel, and so it's always great to you know, meet people who are coming from, you know, quite literally any continent to you know, discuss interesting ideas. That's sort of my favorite part. But I agree. I think, you know, student is the sort of default name that we use, but I try to say attendee because, you know, when I was there in 2022, one of the students in the cohort was Bob Metcalf, one of the co-inventors of Ethernet, right? And so, you know, there was an interesting project that Bob wanted to work on. And so, you know, Bob was there as a student, but, you know, this is sort of a student in a different sense. You know, a person who is working on a project is what we mean if someone will say student at the school, because, you know, I think that's a somewhat different place in one's career than, let's say, you know, you're an undergraduate who is looking for, you know, good places to start one's career. So, you know, I don't know what word to use. Sometimes we say student, but sometimes we'll try to say attendee to the school. So I definitely agree with that. And then for the other part of the your project that you're asking, or excuse me, the other part that you're asking about was so in, you know, in my cohort, there's people who are now at really exciting labs at MIT. There's one person in the cohort that I really enjoyed speaking to who is at University of California. There was other people who were coming from having worked in industry at various interesting companies. You know, there were also people who were undergraduates and were thinking about graduate school, right? So as someone who was, you know, definitely earlier in my career, but had also, you know, finished the whole undergraduate to, you know, starting working, you know, your job, it was sort of interesting for me to kind of be in the middle of that range of experiences. And so my feeling from talking with people who are at the school in any of these different ranges of their experiences is that they all enjoy speaking with everyone else, either to give advice or also to just see what's new, right? I mean, even if you've been working in a very high-powered career for a very long time, there's lots of stuff out there in the world. And as Filas was saying, just discussing interesting ideas that are coming up and relevant with people who might have had more direct experience with them is always one of the benefits of these informal interactions that happen just from day one up through the end of the school, and after is another nice thing too, is that there's many people who have been at these schools who I'll interact with now as part of what I do for my work here at Wolfram Research, is that there might be some interesting collaboration to do, or even just a friendly hello. So that's another aspect that I should definitely mention.
I mean, so I'm very fortunate, I think, to, in most of my educational journey, have been in institutions that have always put an emphasis on bringing people together from very diverse backgrounds who have very eclectic interests. And I think this is very much the case at the Wolfram Summer School as well. People, I mean, we had students in my cohort. There was someone from the European Space Agency. There were people from all sorts of interesting institutions around Europe and the Middle East and South America. And I remember having many really interesting conversations with them about their work and their interests. I remember also I had a conversation, I believe one of the students, her name was Fiza Rubab. She worked on a posture estimator using neural networks, where you can take an image of a person and then reconstruct a skeleton of their that estimates their current positions and their where their arms and legs are. And I just thought this was one of these. This was just an amazing project, and I had many discussions like this where we would just talk about each other's interests and see how they overlapped and how they connected in and so I think the discussions were inherently very interdisciplinary, and I think that was that's something that I value tremendously in institutions, and I think that's one of the reasons that I ended up actually inquiring about positions at Wolfram.
Yeah, so we get some audience questions. The first one is, my wife has a baby due at the end of June 2024. Congratulations. I live in South Korea. I would like to apply to summer school. How would you recommend I join? So this year we have a remote participation opportunity. So send us an application. Let me share my screen here. Send your application. We will let you know. Apply now. Yeah.
And another thing that I'd like to say to that question is that so in my cohort, there's another student, Hassan, who did a really great project on applying computation to teaching calculus. And that year, Hassan was a remote student. And so, sometimes life just gets in the way. It's not feasible to physically be in a place for 3 weeks, but the in-person experience, because of all the reasons we were mentioning, is really great. However, life gets in the way. 3 weeks is a long time. And so then that was in 2022 that Hassan was a remote student. And then I had joined Wolfram Research, and I was mentoring, and then Hassan came in person during 2023 to work on applying computation to teaching data science to students. And so, this is something that can sometimes happen, is that, if you're not sure about, can you go in person, which I highly recommend go in person, but, so there many students, they might first do a remote project, and then based off of them enjoying the experience, they might say, okay, I actually really want to, go in person, and we definitely encourage that as well.
Yeah, so let's go for the next question. Can you go over the different tracks? I do want to get some advice from you too, for people who are confusing about tracks or how to choose a track. For example, John, you have a background in physics, but you choose educational innovation track. So
I did. So, it's important to note. So the physics track is most of the projects are about the Wolfram Physics project, which I can provide a link that we can make sure gets into the chat, right? So this is a specific model of how one might sort of grow an early universe based off of computation, right? And so then what many of the projects are about is, given this model of how one might do that, where does it connect in interesting ways with other models of how the early universe and cosmology and fundamental physics work? And yes, so this is in fact the exact link that I would refer people to. So one of the reasons why, for me, there's this very interesting project that, to me, for my level of background reading, sounded like this was going to be a 5 or 6 week project rather than a 3-week project. And that's because, this physics project has been going on for a number of years. And so, for the most success in that project, it's nice to sort of be caught up to speed with what's been going on in some of the previous years, so that you can pick up and, carry on with the next piece of research that makes sense to do and is, attainable given the progress that's been happening in the previous couple of years. Now, that's not the same thing as having a background in, let's say, I was speaking to another student who, so he works on like the conformal bootstrap, and also has an interest in studying specifically the strong nuclear force, and so doing like lattice quantum chromodynamics, right? So students who have like a strong knowledge of physics but aren't necessarily caught up to speed on the physics project, you're also more than welcome to apply. And if you want to study, something that's more along the lines of the models that you're familiar with, that's also fine. Administratively, we might wind up having you in the science and tech track rather than like the physics project track. But that's more of an administrative difference rather than anything that you need to worry about. Just indicate in your application, what your level of background in is, and then are you interested in studying like the Wolfram model, or are you interested in doing projects that are in the vein of research that maybe you're doing in graduate school, for example? So I think that's an interesting point of clarification, that there's a physics track for studying specific physics models, and there's also students who have just a more general background in physics, and they might be interested in some other track. In my case, I decided to work on projects that were about physics education, but I think the same would apply to someone that is interested in a physics problem that, let's say, quantum is another big one, right? So if you have a background in quantum, you are also more than welcome to work on these sorts of projects. But that's sort of a different starting point and a different target endpoint, let's say, than you're going to specifically make progress on a particular physical model.
So Filas, were you in the science and tech track?
Yes, I was in the science and tech track, and I applied for the science and tech track because I felt that it was the I guess maybe the most flexible track for science and tech stuff that wasn't necessarily going to lean very strongly either towards the physics project or towards the new kind of science kinds of projects that people have. And I think that I understand that probably in the audience, most of the audience members are going to be people who are interested in Wolfram language and interested in programming. But in case you're not, I just want to stress as well that we've been putting a lot of effort into developing programs and tracks in the Wolfram Summer School that are open to people who don't have as much of a background in programming and science, especially the educational innovation and the philosophy and strategy track, which is a new track this summer school. And these are tracks that are designed for people who are coming to the summer school with the goal to design tools for education, to design approaches to education that use a computational perspective, or people who might be interested in designing strategies for organization, designing management strategies, or that kind, designing new modes of interactions with large language models or with generative AI, for example. Might be people who are interested in that kind of thing, but don't necessarily have very much experience with the Wolfram language, might be quite interested in the philosophy and strategy track, for example. So I want to stress that even though we're a computational company and we focus on computational tools and computational perspectives, we don't expect that students applying to the Wolfram Summer School will necessarily be familiar with the detail of computational approaches using Wolfram language. And you, as a student, you don't also necessarily have to have very much experience with Wolfram language. As long as you're willing to you're willing to learn and interact with the Wolfram language and dedicate yourself through the duration of the project to developing your capacities with your abilities to use the tools. This is a great opportunity, and I really encourage people to consider it.
Yeah.
And
So
I agree.
educational innovation. John has attended the track, and philosophy and strategy is a new track for this year. So as Filas mentioned, if you're not familiar with Wolfram language or coding, but still you might want to learn more about like what's the impact of AI, how to incorporate AI into your like business strategy, or kind of like your life design. I think that's a good track. And also Wolfram has a lot of people are working on the frontier of technology. So how to like learn their mindset, their strategy and the philosophy. I think that's a good opportunity.
And for our fifth track, I put in a link that we can get to our audience there of something that was in the NKS and Ruleology track as well. So this was original research that is definitely in the preprint phase. I'm not sure when they're going to publish, but at any rate, there is some really interesting progress on a novel mathematical problem. So if you're a fan of tilings, there's some open questions in the world of non-periodic tilings. And so one of the projects in that new kind of science and Ruleology track had a really, really great result that, again, I think people are always surprised what can actually be done in 3 weeks. And so that's also a track that if you're interested in sort of pure math and maybe are, as Filas was saying, less experienced, I should say, in the computational aspect of these things, but you want to learn and there's some interesting problems that you want to study, I would say that that's the track that you should probably apply to first.
So we get a follow-up question about what's the process for applying to scholarship for remote attendees. So after we go through your application, our coordinator will reach out to you for interview, and then after that, if you are qualified for a scholarship, we will send you the scholarship application form. And another question is, as a student, how will I be supported throughout my stay there? What kind of help is offered during the projects?
Yeah, so as we were saying a bit before, basically every day there are a variety of avenues out there. So we have a platform. We usually use Discord for the last few years. In other years we've used Slack. So it just depends on the year which platform we use. But there'll be channels that people can communicate asynchronously. So this is also nice for remote students as a way to have some of these informal conversations. And the so that's always available. And then if you are there in the in-person venue, then of course people are always at meals together and walking around campus together. And so this is available. Then we've also got people who are there, not only your mentors, but other staff who are just there, in case anything comes up that, for example, I'm trying to think of what a maybe slightly amusing version of this would be. So for example, if you're eating the food there on campus and it's the third week and you're thinking, oh, I'm really craving X, Y, or Z, who's been around to some of the restaurants to meet my craving of what food I'd like to get around the area. There's people who have either been to the area before or have spent the last few weeks exploring, and that sort of informal support is also there, as well as the more formal channels that we have.
Yeah, so each student will be connected with one or two mentor. Your mentor or instructor will be your official contact point of your projects. And on the first week, you will have, depending on the track, so the first 3 tracks, physics project, science and tech, and NKS, will have group project meeting with Stephen and with your mentor. educational innovation and strategy and philosophy are similar organizations. So John, you can talk a bit about like we have a different style of group meetings based on the track, and then besides that, you can always get informal support from like staff who are not your mentor.
Yeah. So as you were saying, for the educational innovation, philosophy, and strategy tracks, so partly for logistical reasons, but also for another reason that I'll mention, we organize the project meetings for those a little bit differently. So if we, there's only one Stephen Wolfram, and so to choose an order for doing these things, we don't want it to get too late into the school before we've had a lot of really productive project meetings, right? And so if the bottleneck there is, well, there's only so much time in the day and Stephen can't be in 3 meetings at once, what we do for the educational innovation and the philosophy and strategy track is that those will have meetings with mentors first so that you can get started right away on a direction. And then later on, there's the opportunity to do the, meeting Stephen and discussing projects and these sorts of things. Now, the other reason, aside from just the logistical, there's only so much time in the day, is that also for the physics project or for some of these other things, Stephen has more that he wants to, like, oh, there's this one detail about the code that you might write that that might be good to have some input or a discussion about. Whereas for some of these other tracks, figuring out some of this direction of those details, a lot of times we can figure that out in those initial meetings, and then the project meeting is more about, okay, so this is what we've decided, and then as a sanity check, Stephen, what's your input? And so for a combination of logistical plus some of the nitty gritty input on, oh, you should do this code or not that code, it tends to work better if we organize them just a little bit different in terms of the chronology for those 2 tracks.
Yeah, thanks. So since we have like 8 minutes left, I want to talk about the impact of summer school on your career path. Like obviously, John, summer school for you is like a tipping point, and you pivot your career. And for Filas, through summer school, you end up work at Wolfram Research, entering the tech industry. So I would like to hear more about your experience in terms of like how summer school influenced your career.
Sure. So I'll try to keep this brief because you mentioned that we're short on time. So I think there's 2 useful aspects for it from the part of my career that I was. So I had been thinking about, do I want to stay on my current career path or do I want to explore other options? So getting that information and that firsthand sense of what it would be like was really valuable to me. And then the other thing which is helpful is that, outside of university, it's not necessarily trivial to be able to have a substantial body of work that you do that is sort of the changing of direction, right? I mean, people manage to do it, but it's very convenient to go to a program where, whether or not, I decide to stay directly in education or whether I'm interested in going in this other area and eventually working for Wolfram Research, either way, I'm going to do something which is useful to me. And, it's an opportunity to sit down and do a project that is a nice way to segue sort of away from the usual thing that you might be doing. And I think for people who are a little bit further along in their career, I want to point out that that's useful, right? Is that, having something that you've finished is a really nice way both for yourself and to sort of show to others is like, okay, I'm thinking about switching what I'm doing here.
I would say that it's been a huge change and a huge opportunity for me. I think that the summer school is also an amazing opportunity to get a sense of the kinds of culture and the kinds of cultures and the kind of ethos that are represented in tech spaces. Not because, I mean, you get a sense of the kinds of culture that you can find at Wolfram, but you also get a sense of other people coming from different tech spaces and their senses of how things go in different companies. So I think it's a great introduction to the tech sector. And then I mean, it's been really amazing in several ways, because I get to work on subjects that I find interesting. I get to study. I get to learn every day at my job, and that's something that I know I wouldn't find in every position, including even in the tech sector, I think. And it's something I'm really grateful for, and something that I think is I think it's something that's very precious in the context of I mean, also another thing maybe just to touch on is that at the moment there's a lot of uncertainty around being able to find work, especially for young people in the tech sector and in many other industries as well. And so having a pathway for me, straight after graduating, having a pathway into a tech position, and being able to rely on my connections at Wolfram from the summer school for to build that that network has been a really impactful aspect of my experience.
Yeah, I would agree. Like there are a lot of challenges going on to getting a job in the tech industry, but I think summer school can really help you get a connection, networking, and also help you build the portfolio, because you will have a project, just like Filas showed the community post. So like you can easily send a link to people to show what you have done, what you're capable of. Actually, we get another question about like the application. So currently the question is, when all the slots has been filled, do you send the application to unaccepted applicants? So basically, currently we are still open for the application, and we are doing a rolling basis application. If you get accepted, we will send you a letter and then help walk you through the registration. For those who are unaccepted, we will probably send out the rejection email. Sometimes we would invite you to apply next year for most of case. So that will be sending out like late June. So currently we're still open for both the in-person opportunities for all the tracks and also the remote track. So we have 3 minutes left. So can two of you just give 1 or 2 short sentences about like your suggestion to applicants or upcoming students?
Yeah, so I would say in general, find ways that you can make yourself stand out. So that's true both of the application and in terms of the project that you decide to do for the school. I think that's the short but sweet. We could elaborate on that in the future maybe, but you know, find ways to make yourself stand out, and having a project at the end of the 3 weeks is a great way to do that.
And I would say make sure to be broad in your project proposals, and pick subjects that you would actually be interested in studying, and then in practice be flexible in terms of how you want to implement that project when you actually come to the summer school.
Yeah, thank you both. So for the audience, if you have further questions, you can email to summer@wolfram.com. So we will address your question through email. And I think for the upcoming live stream, we will get more summer school alum to talk about their experience. Or if you have like additional question, or if you want to hear more about like someone with the background similar to you, stay tuned. We will post on our LinkedIn and our YouTube channel. So thanks for everyone joining the live stream today, and thank you, John and Filas. We will see everyone next time.
And we hope at the school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cheers, everyone.